So it's of course not called a bucket hat for nothing. So when you look inside of the bucket, you can see that I have this basted. I have it basted all the way around. And that's to prep it for me to now take this hand stitching thread. And I'm gonna give you a term that might sound strange, but I'm going to fell the edges by hand. That's a tailoring term, but we're going to fell the edges in the bucket. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, when I actually thread this needle, I'm threading it in such a way that I will still use a single strand. It's not doubled. To knot the thread, go around your finger a couple of times, kind of roll it, grab your nail right there and pull it, boom, you've got a knot. Okay, that's simple. Now I don't want that big lump to show, so my first draw is going to be under that seam right there, so I can shove that knot under it. All right, now let's try to hold this in a way that you can see it. You can kind of see the position of hand sewing at this point. So I'm hoping that this is nicely placed in the shot. I'm pushing that thimble from the side. And so I go in, pull, in, pull. Now, realistically, I'm not going to do one at a time. I'm actually going to go 1, 2, 3. Then I'll pull. Usually more than that. 1, 2, 3. Now, I'm not doing this in the same spot. I'm advancing as I go. 1, 2. We're advancing as we go. At least 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then pull. 1. Uh-oh. It got away from me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Anywhere in there. Whatever works out for you. One. Well, I don't actually count. I'm doing that for your benefit. But and I'm working my way on around the hat. See that I don't even have to think about the thimble use. In time, it becomes a natural movement to the point to where using a thimble is the only thing that you know. It's just a natural way of a hand sawing. If I was to just grab a needle without my thimble, I would probably run the stitch up into my finger, because my natural inclination will be to push the back side of that needle with my thimble. And if that thimble is not there, then that means I'm going to push that right into my hand, right? But I'm not even going fast. And you can see how with the thimble, this is a heavy cloth here. This is denim. And it's hitting a layer of canvas as it goes through as well. So do that quickly with just your hand. That might be a challenge. You might be able to do it. I can't do that. And if that works out for you, that's I'm not here to say anything. But years of tailoring, years of suit making, my hand is going to just naturally gravitate to the need of that thimble. Now, I'm using the back of my hand as a gauge, but it's not really much of an application in these thick layers. But my hand still does exactly what it needs to do. I'm using this hand right here as a depth gauge. I guess that makes sense. Hope that makes sense. So that I'm only going through the layer that I need to go through. I'm not going all the way through to the other side. And if this was a thinner cloth, my finger would detect if I'm getting close to to poking this needle out on the other side. So I think of it as using it as a depth gauge. And it's a natural progression. It's a natural thing that happens. And most of these things just become natural movements. And I know the thimble, some people fear that they would lose the sensitivity of being able to judge how deeply they're pushing and so forth. But that goes away. That goes away very soon once you continue to use the thimble. One, two, three, and then we pull it. Now, let me make a note here that this single layer of thread, in this case, is a very strong thread. As a tailor, I usually use I use either this or a silk thread made for hand sewing. So it's made to be used in single layers. It's not made to be used as a double layer as you're threading it. So you see that actually, in this case, it allowed that needle pop right out, didn't it? If it was a double layer, that wouldn't happen. But I wanted to mention that this thread is waxed, and It's waxed right out of the package because it's made for hand sewing. If you have a thread that you're going to use for hand sewing, and it's just a regular thread, that's cool, but you need to wax it. Waxing it strengthens the thread itself, but it also keeps it from knotting up as you go straight through a long series of stitching. So you do want to wax it. Yeah, I'm about at the end there. Looks like I'm at the end. I only needed one strand of thread to get me there. We got just a couple of more stitches, and we are home. And I've met up to the knot. I'm going to take 1, 2. Now I'm just doing some back stitches here. 3, 4. One more right there. I'm going to clip that. And Bob's your uncle. All right, so that is, and at this point I can remove that basting thread, but I'm going to lightly, just with the tip of my iron, I'm going to lightly hit that the edge first, and then I'm going to remove that basting thread. Okay, so I'm back and I've done that. Just lightly with the tip, went around the edge. So now I can pull that basting thread out. And it come right on out. Goes in easily, comes out easily. This is actually basting thread. That's another tailoring staple. This isn't tailoring, but some techniques of tailoring are used, well, all of the techniques in tailoring are used for a purpose. Very few are just for decoration. And there's one more that I'm going to show you that many feel is just for decoration, but it's absolutely for a functional purpose, a very important functional purpose. Pull that on out of there. All right, so there we go. That is nice lining on the inside. I think my wife will like the purple. And looks pretty. So now, on this side right here, I want you to look at something. Okay. Now, on the edge, you'll notice that on the edge of this brim, it's nice and firm and stable, and we get a nice edge on it. Okay, see that? Right here, you can see that the edge is not so great yet, right? What I did right here, I did what's called a pick stitch. A pick stitch. Some call it a prick stitch. I call it a pick stitch. Many call it either of the two. It's the same thing. It is a stitch that is actually done on the outside here and is virtually invisible. And for a reference, it's basically accomplishing the same as if I took a stitch and did actually did a machine stitch right across there, right? It would hold that firmly. So that is an option that you have on this edge to pull the salvages of the piping and the top and bottom of the hat, put a stitch right across the edge, and that will accomplish the same thing of what I'm going to use a pick stitch for. Now, the advantage of a pick stitch is that I don't have that obvious stitch going all the way around the hat, and that you'll notice that pick stitch around lapels of a suit. That's not a decoration. It's there to hold the edges right where they need to stay, to keep them nice, firm, and crisp. Let's do that. Making that knot again. Boom. There we go. Now, in this case, I'm going to demonstrate this, and I'm going to now I want to hide that initial. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down and under, because I want to get right at the edge of that. Okay. Let me go under there. A little space under there. And get me to the outside and still hide, yeah, that knot under the fold of the lining there. Nice, very nice, very nice. Okay, so I want to see if you can get a visual of that edge right now. It's kind of roly-poly, right? We're going to make that nice and crisp by doing a simple pick stitch. Okay, so I have the first one started there, and I'm only going to go down. I don't know how well you can see that on camera, but the first stitch is starting right there. Okay, so I'm going to do like a micro back stitch and then come up slightly in front of it, right? Boom, that's your first stitch. And I'm going to be doing that micro back stitch, and we're gonna have that about a 1/16 of an inch from the edge, and that back stitch is just a tiny little bite. All right, it's so tiny. Let me get more light right here, actually, because make sure that I can see that with this dark stitch. That bite is so tiny, and it's only affecting. It's not going all the way through. It's affecting the nearest layer that's under here. It's not going through all layers. It's just catching basically one layer, and it's locking that edge down. And once again, this whole process, although it's hand stitching, when you get used to a thimble, this will go a lot quicker than you would imagine that it would, as I work my way around this hat. And this is a pick stitch. And it will absolutely make the edge here as the hat hits the brim. It'll make a nice crisp edge, and that edge will be sewn in and not just pressed in. Now, this is one of those, none of this is on the instructions for this hat. 90% of what I did to build this hat has nothing to do has nothing to do with the printed instructions. Often printed instructions are the bare minimum that you need to do something. My head is a library of instructions. So I just need the basic frame of something, and then I can choose for any given project, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 different ways to do a particular detail of it. That many ways to put anything to, for example, if we're making what often are called welt pockets, W-E-L-T, in a pattern, that's generally referring to a jetted. Think of a jet airplane, a jetted pocket. So, but for reference, I'm just going to go ahead and say a welt pocket because that's what they often write it as. One of the hardest ways of making a welt pocket is the way they usually have that in the pattern. But there are probably 5, 10 or so different ways to make that same pocket more accurately and simpler, really, than the way that they place it in the like a Vogue pattern. Now, I'll stop right there for a second and kind of show you what we have. Right now, you can see the edge that I put the stitch. Now, it hasn't been pressed. Look at the edge of that versus what has not been done yet. Can you see that? This has not been done yet. Notice that and how pretty that is. That's pretty, right? Well, that's nice construction right there. So I'm going to continue it on around. And I'm actually doing this in real time for you because I want you to see that you don't have to be intimidated in thinking that just because you grab a needle and thread to do something, that it's going to take you a lifetime to get that little piece of something done. And also, I want you to notice that once again, I'm doing this right on the outside of the garment. Can you see that? I'm standing right in front of it. I don't see that. Can you see this stitch that I'm making? Probably not. Probably not. I'll have to review this video later. But I'm right here in front of it, and I can't see it. I mean, it's very faint. And that's the point. It's functional. I'm doing this right on the top of the garment, if you can imagine that. This is a real thick layer right here. So this is even more important right here that it received that. Boom. And it, wow, locked it right down. Locked it right down like a boss. So even though the instructions don't call for this, yeah, I had to get a little bespoke on it. Once a bespoke tailor, always a bespoke tailor. So there will always be instructions in a pattern And my brain will go through its library and say, okay, yeah, I know a different way that for me, I think is a better way. And I'm just going to do that. So we're working this on the round. Pull that there. Now, one thing you will notice that on this pick stitch, we are doing one stitch at a time. I'm not doing like the fell stitch. I would go 3 or 4 or 5 stitches and then pull. This stitch we are doing one at a time, and you can see that it's still advancing pretty fast as we move on around the hat. As we move on around the hat, or we can say as we move on or advance on around the garment, because this is a garment stitch that I'm applying to this hat. And I'm making sure with my hand, with my left hand and my thumb here, that I pull that down so that I get a nice edge. So I'm locking down a clean edge. Does that make sense? I'm pulling that down with like right there so that I get myself a good clean edge as I work my way on around. Yeah, that's nice. And you can see a nice little faint pick stitch just as you would on the lapels of a bespoke jacket. You can see that little detail. And so now, if you didn't know before, that detail is there not even mainly to make the edge look distinguished with a stitch around it, it locks down the edge of that jacket, of those lapels, keeps them there. So with dry cleaning and everything else, the edge of the lapel doesn't swell back out. So it's first and foremost functional, and as a side benefit, it has that classic bespoke appearance on the edge of the lapel that everyone is accustomed to seeing. That pick stitch all the way around the collar and lapel, and the whole front of the coat, actually, the whole front of the jacket. So if you didn't know before, now you know. Now you know. It is function first. And you'll find that in most things tailoring, it's function first, and a classic look and appearance after that. And keep in mind here, I'm not going through all layers. So my hand under me feels the lining that we just stitched in, and all of those things. I'm not touching that at all. And even before we even get near to that, there is a few layers of this heavy denim because of the seam allowances and canvassing. I'm only grabbing a layer of that. to make this edge, and that's all that's needed to give me that firm, permanently sewn in, crisp edge where these two pieces connect. All right, I should be getting, yeah, I'm getting pretty close to the finish of this. Might have to grab another strand to finish it. Let's see if I can make it. Yep. That tried to get away from me, didn't it? No, I think I can make it. I think I'll make it. I believe I will most certainly make it with just one strand of silk thread, waxed silk thread. Now, in this case, what I use is it's not actually, it's an imitation silk. It's still waxed, and it's from rices, right? Hand sewing, waxed hand thread. And we are almost at the edge, the end of this. That's such a subtle fitting of edge that I have to kind of, oh, I think I'm here. I think I have arrived. I believe I have arrived at the edge. I'll go a few more. Oh, yep. We have arrived here nicely. Okay, and then I'm just going to pull that to the back of it. I'll take a couple more, just for good measure. And I'm going to feed that on the inside. Avoid the lining there, because I don't want that coming through the lining. Okay. So, and I'll just blend a couple stitches there, right on that felling stitch of the lining, and we'll call it done with that. One more. All right. Boom. Very good. And we have a nice, look at that, nice crisp edge all the way around. That's beautiful. See that? You see that? All right. And the lining on the inside there. All right. Looks like we have us a bucket hat here. Ready for my wife's approval. Very nice.